Who are some names to listen out for at number 26? Some guys that you think are intriguing for what the Browns are looking for?
Well, it's tough because in years past, they've drafted so early that you could get a real feel for. Like last year with pick 10, we just had a good feeling that the Browns are going to take a tackle. Like it was just a hole they needed to fill. Well, as they pursue Jadeveon Clowney and they pursue some other veteran defensive ends, and they've been active in that market, if you can kind of fill that role at defensive end, you're looking at a situation where if you can fill defensive end and maybe go get another veteran outside corner, and really Troy Hill could be that guy for them. They could be viewing him as another guy who could step outside because Troy Hill spent his early portions of his career playing outside. That you go into the draft truly saying best player available. So it's been twofold. You have a situation where the Browns have picked so early for so long, we kind of pigeonholed them quite easily into what they were going to take. We haven't seen the Browns pick 26 for a long time. So then it becomes not only is who the Browns are going to take, it's also who's available. So that becomes even more of a challenge. So positions of importance for them, they could ultimately trade down, but positions of importance are defensive end and corner if they're going to sit at 26. Those are the far more likely places that you will see them pick a player. Now, defensive ends, Kwity Paye, I think from Michigan is a good option. He tested extremely well, powerful, ran in the 4.5s. The numbers for these guys are kind of crazy. Looking at some of these players, but yeah, Kwity Paye is not overly tall, but a very strong player, point of attack player, kind of similar to Clowney in the way he can play the run game, but also be a really nice speed to power rush player as well. Really, really fun and interesting target. Jaycee Horn at the cornerback market is a guy that I think is certainly very interesting. He's maybe played himself completely out of that position. I think we're talking about Azeez Ojulari. I'll talk about him too, real quick, from Georgia. Another player is not very big, not very like lengthy in terms of body type. Good bend for Azeez. I think he can be a really good player from Georgia. I think he's got a really good chance to be a nice player. But he's not overly big, so he's going to rely on speed. Can he also anchor the edge? There are clips where he can anchor the edge, but we'll just kind of have to see sort of where he settles in terms of his testing and whatnot. We haven't seen his testing yet, but Azeez Ojulari is an interesting target. I think Jaycee Horn and Asante Samuel Jr. are two corners that are very interesting. Jaycee Horn tested out of this world. Joe Horn's son, South Carolina corner. Very twitchy, very up-in-your-face corner who can get up and play man coverage. There was some start to think that he would be available into the first round, but the way he tested, it's hard to see him falling that far. The Browns might get interested in moving up for JC if that's a player they really like. Asante Samuel Jr., another NFL bloodline player whose dad was a fantastic corner. He's out of Florida State. Very shifty, ran pretty well in testing, jumped well enough to feel good about him. Not as big, more of a Denzel Ward body type player. Could be kind of similar in that mold. Maybe the Browns are looking for a different body type, but a smaller guy, but 5'10", can still do enough of the things that he needs to do really well. He's very, very heady. He's a good feel for route combinations. I like him in both zone and man. He could be an interesting player for them, produced well. Linebackers is not a position I expect the Browns to take early. If they do get interested, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from Notre Dame is the guy who is of particular interest because he has safety skills, playing the more traditional will linebacker role, especially in dime sets and things of that nature. Fast, twitchy. His tape shows a guy who can play run support, who can play man-to-man on slot. He can play the curl flat down into hook zones too. He can do a bunch of different things, and he is not just a linebacker. He's a very modern day type of player who can cover. We haven't seen him cover in deep zone as a true safety and a half field safety, but I don't doubt with his athleticism that he can do it. I think he is an extremely interesting player, and one that if the Browns do decide to get that maybe rover player, they kind of name it different defenses, a rover, a bandit, a viper. I've heard that name used before. That type of flexible player who can play inside or out and is diverse against multiple position groupings in terms of what personnel teams put on the field, tight ends and whatnot, can be on the field at all times, is a good and interesting prospect. And then lastly, if they're still interested in another safety, which they very well could be because they want the flexibility of as many versatile defensive backs as they can possibly find. Trevon Merrick from TCU is a very good player. He's a guy who can play deep center field. He tests well. He can run. He can change the direction like he needs to change direction. He played slot coverage. He's come down and played man coverage on tight ends. He can support run game in the box. Is very good at the ball's arrival point. Making plays on the football without going through people and drawing flags. He's just fluid. He's fluid, and you want your safeties to be guys who can really change direction, have those kind of quick hips and can change and run deep and put a foot in the ground and come up and play forward. He's not afraid to come up and hit you. So if they're looking for that guy, you kind of think of like another Grant Delpit type player with positional flexibility to play deep, to play up toward the line of scrimmage, to do those things and be as diverse in their secondary as possible. Then Trevon Moehrig is an interesting player at 26 who could definitely be there.